So, have you ever heard the stereotype that the Dutch are, well, kind of cheap? You know, they'll split a dinner bill down to the very last cent, they bring their own sandwiches to work in those little plastic containers, and they will bike for miles in the pouring rain just to save on a cab fare. And yeah, the rest of the world kind of looks at that and thinks, wow, what miserable penny pinchers. But here's the crazy part, the paradox. This is one of the wealthiest populations on the entire planet. Okay, so let's really get into this, because it is a fascinating question. If all their financial habits look so frugal, almost stingy to an outsider, how in the world did they end up so incredibly wealthy? I'll tell you right now, it is not an accident. And it's not about depriving themselves. No, it's about something much, much more powerful. The difference between what we think we see and what's actually happening is it's huge. On one side, you have this picture of someone obsessively counting every single cent. But on the other side, you've got the cold hard facts. An average household net wealth of $400,000, people who actually retire with real pensions, and a whole culture that's just built around financial security. The most important thing here is that whatever they're doing, it's clearly working. So here's how we're going to break this all down. We're going to explore what I'm calling their financial immune system. Then, we'll deconstruct the specific habits that fuel it, see the absolutely staggering million-dollar difference it can make, and finally, we'll lay out a simple 3-step action plan you can actually use yourself. Okay, this right here is the big idea. This is the key that unlocks the entire Dutch secret to wealth. You see, they don't just try to save money using willpower. That's a losing game. Instead, they've built this cultural immune system that automatically, without even thinking, fights off all the little financial parasites that drain everybody else's bank accounts. So let's put a definition on that. A financial immune system is basically a set of habits and social rules that act like an automatic defense shield. It stops all those tiny, constant leaks, the daily coffees, the subscriptions you forgot you were even paying for, and that right there allows your wealth to quietly grow and compound in the background. The best part? It works without you even having to think about it.
All right, so what are the actual building blocks of this so-called immune system? Let's take it apart, piece by piece, and look at the specific, practical habits the Dutch use every single day to see how this whole thing is constructed.
So the first line of defense is all about plugging those small, daily leaks that can turn into huge drains. We're talking about things like packing your own lunch. This isn't about being broke, it's about being strategic. Same thing goes for drinking the free office coffee, packing snacks for a family trip, or, just buying your basics at discount stores like Aldi. These aren't tough one-off decisions for them. This is just the default setting.
And just think about the power of one of those habits. Just one. Let's say the average person spends, $15 a day on buying lunch? A homemade sandwich costs maybe $3. That difference, it adds up to nearly $3,000 a year. That's not small change, my friends. That is a serious contribution to your investment account just from changing how you eat lunch. When you see it laid out visually like this, the difference is just wild. Packing your lunch and drinking the office coffee might cost you around $800 a year. But the convenience of buying your lunch and getting a daily Starbucks, that can easily top $5,000. You're getting the exact same outcome. You're fed, you're caffeinated, but the financial result is completely, totally different. Now let's go to the next layer of defense, the social and cultural stuff. In the Netherlands, going Dutch isn't a punchline. It's just normal. They use apps like Tiki to send payment requests to friends for the exact amount they owe. This totally removes that awkward social pressure to overspend. And get this, there's no status in showing off your wealth. In fact, it's actually frowned upon. And they almost always use debit cards, not credit, which completely changes their relationship with money. This is a very common saying in the Netherlands, and it perfectly captures the mindset. Just act normal. That's crazy enough already. The goal isn't to stand out with flashy cars or expensive watches. No, status comes from being modest, from being grounded, from being normal. This one simple idea completely short-circuits that whole game of keeping up with the Joneses that financially traps so many people. So, let's talk about that debit card habit because it's so important. What it does is eliminate a huge financial parasite. Did you know research shows people spend up to 18% more when they use a credit card? It just doesn't feel like real money. With debit, you can only spend what you actually have. By making debit the default, the Dutch have essentially vaccinated their entire society against the pandemic of high-interest credit card debt. So beyond the daily choices, the Dutch have built these amazing systemic defenses. They literally engineer their environment for building wealth.
Cycling isn't a weekend hobby. It's their main way of getting around. Saving money isn't something they do if there's cash left over at the end of the month. No, it is the default state. And they have a whole culture around minimizing waste, repairing things, reusing them, reselling them, which means they squeeze every last drop of value out of everything they own.
And this really shows you what a car actually is for most people, a financial black hole. It's not one single expense. Oh no, it is a constant, relentless drain from 5 different directions all at once. The payment itself, the insurance, the gas, the maintenance, and that silent killer, depreciation. For the most part, the Dutch just sidestep this entire financial mess by hopping on a bike.
And when you look at the long-term impact, it is absolutely mind-blowing. The average American car costs something like $9,000 a year, all in. If you just decide not to have that expense over a 40-year career and you invest the savings instead, that one single decision could be worth over $2 million. This isn't about being cheap. This is about understanding the massive, monumental opportunity cost of one systemic choice.
Okay, so we've looked at all the habits. Now let's get to the payoff. Let's see what happens when 2 people earning the exact same income run these 2 very different financial systems over their lifetime.
Here it is. This is the result. Same $75,000 income. The person running the typical American system saves about 5% and ends up with maybe $150,000 by age 55. Not bad. But the person running the Dutch system, they save 28% and end up with over $1.2 million. The difference is more than $1 million. And here's the kicker. It was never about how much they earned. It was always about the system they were using.
So you're probably thinking, okay, that's great, but how can I actually start doing this? Well, you don't have to move to Amsterdam. You can start building your very own financial immune system right now. Here's a super simple 3-step action plan to get you started.
Okay, step 1, audit and purge. Find all those little financial parasites, the recurring subscriptions, the forgotten costs, and cut half of them today, immediately. Step 2, automate one habit. Just pick one. It could be packing your lunch. Do it for 1 month, watch the savings pile up, and then lock it in as a permanent habit. And step 3, this one's huge. Invert your status signals. Stop spending money to signal to other people that you're wealthy. Instead, start redirecting that money into assets that actually build wealth.
And really, that's the ultimate lesson here. The Dutch aren't superhuman. They're not more disciplined than anyone else. They don't rely on something as flimsy as willpower. They just built a better system. A system where the default choices, the easy choices, automatically lead to building wealth. And a good system will be willpower every single time.
So, all of this leaves us with one final and, I think, pretty provocative thought. You've got one culture that prioritizes looking rich, but is often broke behind the scenes. And you've got another culture that is perceived as cheap, but is actually truly rich. The systems they use produce exactly what they're designed for. So the only question left is, which one are you going to choose to be?